promoting a healthy environment. It's the air we breathe. Clean, safe water. Responsible management of our natural resources. We protect and restore for a sustainable future. Environment matters.
Cutting the ribbon at West Virginia's newest green school, we'll check out how students at a middle school in Huntington are benefiting from the state's Sustainable Schools Building Program. Plus,
well, I put 4 new ones on my truck. My kids put tires on their cars, and you got to get rid of them.
the DEP kicks off its annual tire recycling program with a stop in Wayne County, giving residents there a chance to remove those eyesores from the local landscape. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new season of Environment Matters. I'm Greg Adolphson with the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection. Cleanup work has begun at the site of a January chemical spill that contaminated the water supply of 300,000 West Virginia residents. The DEP's Mike Huff has the latest on the efforts.
Work has started on the process of decommissioning and cleaning the tanks at Freedom Industries in Charleston in preparation for demolition and removal. Governor Earl Ray Tomblin ordered the company to dismantle and properly dispose of all of its above-ground storage tanks and associated piping and machinery back on January 24th. 2 weeks after a faulty tank leaked an estimated 10,000 gallons of the chemical MCHM and another chemical, PPH. The chemicals spilled into the Elk River and reached the intakes of the West Virginia American Water Company's plant about a mile and a half downstream, causing a do-not-use order to be issued in parts of 9 surrounding counties supplied by the plant. Work on decommissioning the Freedom Industries facility is expected to take months. DEP Cabinet Secretary Randy Huffman.
You have a couple issues in play. One is the soil underneath of those tanks is likely contaminated with MCHM, and we have to make sure that we know the extent of that contamination, and we have to be able to remediate it so that it doesn't get in the river. And part of that's going to consist of taking some tanks down. They have to remove some of the tanks on the northern end of the property first. That's the upriver side of the property. They have to remove those tanks, 5 or 6 of them, and open up the ground so they can get an idea of what they're up against. So they will do that first, and then they'll get an understanding of the extent of the groundwater contamination before they proceed on to take down the rest of the tanks.
Freedom Industries has also conducted an asbestos survey of the tanks and related infrastructure, and will also do a lead paint assessment before removing the tanks. The leak originated in tank number 396, the middle tank in the row of 3 smaller tanks. Workers have already cut a hole in the tank to remove what's called the tank heel. Tank heel is the material that remains at the bottom of a storage tank that can't be removed through the normal pumping process. The tank will then be cleaned and sandblasted by the Chemical Safety Board.
The Chemical Safety Board is going to take ownership of the bottom half of the tank that leaked. So hopefully they will be able to provide some insight. Hopefully they'll be able to provide something that will be of benefit to us in the rulemaking process. We'll learn a little bit about what happened. Was it simply rust? Was there a contact issue? We don't know. So maybe if we learn something, it'll help us when we put together the tank standards for the new tank legislation.
The bill passed by the state legislature establishes a regulatory framework to help safeguard water supplies and above-ground storage tank facilities.
It's the most important thing that we need, and that is the ability to set standards for how tanks should be tested, certified, operated, tanks and their secondary containment structures, and then to have the authority to require them to do an annual certification, so that we have these standards, and then an engineer certifies every year that the tanks are meeting those standards, or if they're not, they put together a remediation plan for how they can bring the tanks back into compliance. If we had something that simple and that straightforward, we could have prevented this situation from ever happening. And by having it in the future, we can minimize the risk of anything like this ever happening again.
But the problem of unregulated above-ground storage tanks is not strictly a West Virginia problem. And the hope is that lessons learned in the Freedom Industries spill can make a difference in the rest of the country.
And I think across the country, these same vulnerabilities exist because knowing what I know about federal environmental law, you're not going to find anything in the federal law that requires the kinds of things that we are requiring in this legislation, which would prevent these types of incidents. So yes, I think across the country, people are going to learn from this incident, and different states are going to take different actions to minimize their risks as well.
During the tank removal, Freedom Industries is required to take steps to control dust and airborne emissions from the facility, along with controlling stormwater infiltration and contact with potentially contaminated water. Workers must install impervious liner materials to cover areas exposed during the removal of the tanks and take all necessary steps to prevent spills or releases to the ground or the Elk River. No on-site burning is permitted.
I think the most pronounced lingering impact is going to be public confidence. People talk about a lack of trust in their government, and that's unfortunate, but we'll work to restore that trust. I mean, we never lied to anyone. We never withheld any information. We never deceived anyone. We tried to get as much information out as quickly as we could, and that's from the DEP all the way up through the governor's office and all the agencies that are under his control. So hopefully people will know that we did have their best interests in mind and still do.
The decommissioning plan was prepared by Civil and Environmental Consultants, Inc. of Export, Pennsylvania, and has been approved by the DEP. Residents living near the facility may notice an increase in the odor of MCHM near the Freedom Industries site as deconstruction activity increases. The DEP has issued notices of violation to Patriot Coal's Kanawha Eagle prep plant following a coal slurry spill there in February. The spill blackened roughly 6 miles of Fields Creek near Winifred after a valve failed in a slurry pipeline, spilling roughly 108,000 gallons of slurry. Fields Creek empties into the Kanawha River at Chesapeake, and evidence of the slurry was observed about a half mile downstream from the mouth of the creek, but dissipated shortly thereafter. No public water supplies were impacted. The company installed check dams. Those are barriers made out of rock, silk fencing, and hay bales to slow the flow of water and cause solids to drop out so that they can be collected by vacuum trucks. Kanawha Eagle officials say the prep plant was not using MCHM in its coal cleaning process, having phased out the use of the chemical in mid-January and replaced it with polypropylene glycol. Samples taken from Fields Creek following the spill tested below the reporting limit of 5 parts per billion to MCHM. Following the spill, the DEP ordered the Kanawha Eagle plant to install external flow meters on its slurry line that are tied into the operator's control room. The meters record flow rates along different parts of the line and can alert operators of the problem. The equipment has an alarm and automatic shutoff if a malfunction is detected. The company must also install remote video cameras along the line to provide a live feedback to the control room. The company has also been instructed to come up with a plan for secondary containment for its slurry lines. The spill remains under investigation. Coming up, we'll check out DEP Day at the state legislature. Plus,
we want children to know that we can make a difference, and the things in this school that we have, they can use in their learning experiences and then carry out through the rest of their life.
how the state's newest middle school is teaching students about the environment. Those stories and more when Environment Matters continues.